Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I sure hope everybody can hear us. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but I hope you've all been able to join us. I will tell you, we have a great group of sustainability leaders here with us today. I'm going to look forward to having them introduce themselves here real quickly, but just to kick us all off, and again, thank you so much for your patience and sticking with us. And you are a part of the Sustainability for a Better Tomorrow panel. We are going to end this promptly at 1 o'clock Eastern time because I know there's other panels and sessions and commitments of everybody here. So just in the way of quick introductions, my name is Jeff Terry. I am the Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability for GAF Materials Corporation. If you guys don't know who GAF is, it is the largest roofing and weatherproofing company in North America. We're a part of Standard Industries, which is the largest roofing company around the world. So it's an honor for me to be with you all today and ultimately to help moderate three incredible leaders in the sustainability space. Bruce, who's the Vice President of Corporate Affairs for Mars Wrigley, North America. Hugh Welsh, who is the General Counsel, Secretary, and President of DSM North America, and a very good friend. And Ezgi Barcenas, sorry for that. She's the Global Vice President for Sustainability for ABM Bev. So three incredible leading companies when it comes to sustainability. And guys, let's just get started. Let's jump right in. And I'll ask each of you to just briefly introduce yourselves and then share something that you're really excited about that you guys and your company is working on in the sustainability space today. Lee, would you like to start us?
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Jeff, and hello to everybody on the line. So yeah, Lee Andrews, I've been at Mars for 25 years, so my whole career spent at Mars. And for those of you that don't know who we are, we're pretty known for one thing, but actually we're bigger in something else. So we're known for our candy and our famous kind of candy brands, including M&Ms. But actually our largest business is our pet care business. So we're a family-owned, privately held business. We've been around for over 100 years, and pet is our biggest business. We have a big pet nutrition business. And we have a pet technology business. We're actually the world's largest provider of vet services, veterinary health as well. So we're a big service business as well as a food and pet care manufacturer. And we're based pretty much everywhere around the world. So great to be here. It's actually hard, I think, with everything going on right now. Certainly over the last few days, it was pretty hard to think about what's exciting right now. I would say what I feel very proud about, actually, if I think about the last few days and actually a few months, is just the way that we've been going about managing through the coronavirus. What a terrible, terrible situation for our associates and for everybody across the world. I think I'm particularly proud, of just the way we've been able to really prioritize keeping everybody safe, first and foremost, and the work we've been doing to ensure people are safe. And we've changed the way we work across retail, manufacturing, the service industry, to try and really change everything about how we work to make sure we've got a very safe workplace. And then what we've been able to do in terms of giving back to communities to really support people at this very tough time, both internationally and locally. We've been doing an awful lot of work with local communities as well as providing funds and well-needed supplies for people. And then finally keeping the business going, the business continuity, which is incredibly important as well, not just to the 125,000 people that we employ, but the much broader impact that we have through our supply chain and actually with all of the essential workers on the front lines, whether it's lorry drivers, grocery store assistants, all the people that rely on us keeping going. So very proud of how we've been able to manage through so far. And I would say I'm very excited, obviously, to be here with everybody today. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Lee. Ezgi, how about you?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks for the Social Innovation Summit for the opportunity. Really excited to be here today. Apologies for the technical difficulties we all had earlier, but great to have this conversation right now. So I'm Ezgi Barcenas. I head up the global sustainability team at ABM Bev. If you guys are not familiar with us, we are the leading global brewer around the world with operations in nearly 50 markets, sell our products in over 100 So we're a truly global, local company. So I would echo a lot of what Lee said about the pandemic and over the last few months, how closely we work with our communities and our supply chains, and really invested heavily in the safety and well-being of our own people, but also in our supply chain and communities as well, where we live and work. So my everyday job, what I cover is really anything and everything to do with sustainability, looking outside our walls as well as inside our walls, and really thinking through what are some of the efficiencies, what are some of the resiliences that we can bring to ensure supply security, to ensure that communities are better off, to ensure that we've got livelihood targets for our farmers around the world. So my work spans from climate action to water stewardship to sustainable agriculture and circular packaging. And we take great pride in how we think about all these issues in a very long-term way. And I think that, this pandemic, if there's one thing it's really shown us how decisive and collaborative we can all be when we realize that the risk is real, right? When we think about the risk of the pandemic, and that's how we approach some of the challenges that we see everywhere else in terms of climate change and inequality in our company. So really proud of how we're investing in that long-term resilience of our operations and our communities as well. So thanks again for the opportunity. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Ezgi. And certainly last but in no ways least, Hugh, would you like to introduce yourself and share some exciting stuff you guys are working on?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. As you mentioned, I have a very eclectic job these days. I'm also the mailroom guy, and I'm doing some maintenance around the building while it's empty. And it's good. I mean, I think everybody's fine with the technical difficulties. You'll find no more agile and adaptable group than those that work in the sustainability space. So I'm sure everybody's good. I am as well. Most of you probably don't know DSM. I like to affectionately say it's the biggest company nobody's ever heard of. We supply Mars. We supply InBev. We supply most of the big food, auto, clean energy, biomedical material manufacturers today. We're essentially a B2B company traded on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, and sustainability is really the core of our strategy. It's just why I can have a role like the president of our North American operations and hopefully still speak somewhat meaningfully to the topic. I'm, of course, certainly proud of all of the work that our employees and our stakeholders have done to support us, through this pandemic, and also the social unrest that we've all experienced the last few days. But I'm really also proud of the fact that through all of this, we've kept our commitment to our sustainable practices, kept our commitment to continuing on R&D and innovation to come up with new products and solutions to some of the biggest challenge that the world is facing, and not lost sight of the fact that we have to continue to use whatever, I'd say, modest political and media capital we have to advocate for the change we all need. And so even using platforms like Zoom or Google Hangouts or Teams, we've been able to work closely with elected officials to keep our climate change agenda, to keep our carbon pricing agenda top of mind for everybody going forward.
Fantastic. Well, guys, kind of everybody in the audience, like I said, we've got three incredible leaders in industry as well as in the sustainability space. So, guys, I'd love each one of you to share with us a little bit of what are some of the biggest game changers that you've seen in corporate sustainability, or from a corporate sustainability perspective, whether it's technology, other kind of innovations from a product service offering perspective, or even on a management and policy perspective. I think it'd be great to learn from you guys as what you've seen over the last 6 to 12 months or seeing coming down the pipeline as it relates to innovation in the sustainability space. Anybody, please feel free.
Yeah, I'm happy to go if you like. So, I think for me, thanks, Jeff, for the question. I mean, I think the sustainable development goals for me has been the really foundational change, and I didn't realize actually when they were being written and kind of came together just what an impact it would have on our business, but also I think globally. I think just to articulate some of the challenges that the world faces in simple ways, to show the breadth of those challenges, but also to make each one of them attainable and each one of them tackleable and measurable, was a huge leap forward, actually. And I think if you look at the recent Edelman survey, it talks about the trust that people put and the responsibility on both governments and private enterprises now to drive change. And I think this is a new, unique moment really for us, where public-private partnership and what we call uncommon collaborations are going to be really how we drive really systemic change at scale. So I'm quite excited about what that is going to drive, and I do think that's here to stay, and I don't think the pandemic will take away that focus. If anything, like I say, people expect it and want to see it even more. I think, for us, it's really then about kind of keeping that focus. So despite everything that's going on, we've been part of a big business coalition that's been driving climate change and tackling climate change particularly hard over these last few weeks, because actually it's even more important than it was before. And so how do we kind of keep going on that journey to reduce the impact of our operations, but also encourage governments and industry around the world to change as well. I think the last thing I'd say is I also think that the role that brands can play responsibly has also been changing. Certainly from personal experience, having seen us set up programs, a really good example would be the program we have Dove Chocolate that has a program with Care International, working in West Africa to encourage particularly female members of the community to build businesses and enterprises. So it's called a Village Saving and Loan Program, and it's been incredibly successful. It's reached tens of thousands of women in West Africa already, and we're increasing funding in that program because it's going so well. And it's been a great example, having been out into Africa and seen some of these programs for myself. It's just an incredibly empowering, motivating, and sustainable way for local people in the community to flourish. So I think brands are going to play an important role. I think business is going to play an even more important role. And I think it's these uncommon, unusual collaborations that are going to be a feature of the sustainability landscape going forward.
Okay, I'll jump in. I think before the pandemic, we saw a lot of conversation in the general media as well as the business media around ESG investing and stakeholder capitalism. And I think those narratives had really picked up traction and started to grow. One of the big changes that I see already happening, and I think will accelerate as we come out of this crisis, is tying executive compensation to targets other than just financial targets. I think we'll see many more, not only executives, but company employees have their short-term incentives, their annual bonuses, or any long-term incentives, could be stock options or restricted shares, tied to targets and metrics like the company's greenhouse gas emissions, or the use of renewable electricity, or how they treat their employees, or even diversity and inclusion metrics. I think that will be not the exception, but the rule as we come out of this. And I also think it's going to create a much larger role for the sustainability professionals within the company that right now are sort of the guardians of those measures. And for quite some time, they've been somewhat tangential to the ongoing operations of the company. I think that there'll be a meaningful change in the way management is also undertaking going forward, where more of those CSR professionals will have a front and center role in operations, and not just in traditional things like public relations and communications.
Yeah, Hugh, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think certainly driving cross-functional kind of ownership around sustainability, sustainable business operations is a critical element of that, and tying that into performance and comp and not just at leadership levels, but at different levels of management throughout the organization.
Yeah. So maybe if I can add a complementary point of view, as well as we're thinking about, what's exciting. I think innovation and the scale of it and what we're seeing out there is incredibly exciting. Back in 2018, when we set our 2025 public commitments, which are, our most ambitious set of commitments yet, we knew that we couldn't hit them, get to the 100% with current ways of working, current technological solutions and advancements out there. So we actually launched our 100+ Sustainability Accelerator, and now we're in the second round. We completed the second round of applications, and we're in the second cohort, where we launched challenges into the world across different categories and said, we're looking for solutions to these shared problems, and please come apply, and we'll invest in your startup. we'll give you a chance to pilot in our operations and supply chain, and then maybe we can scale some of the solutions. And it's been incredible to see the power of what I would call reverse innovation, right? Because when we launched this accelerator, we thought that a lot of the greatest applications would come from the US or Europe, but the power of innovation and the resourcefulness that actually sits around the world in so many different markets around the world, I think is really incredible, because those founders are really thinking about the local constraints and the local context, and they can build those innovations. So, one quick example is, this company out of Israel called Oko. We're looking into weather index barley crop insurance for our farmers in Uganda, something that they never had access to before. And we're building that on top of another startup named BankQ, which was in our first cohort, which is a blockchain technology platform that increases visibility into our supply chain and empowers our farmers, to make sure that they're more financially secure. So I think all these innovations you're seeing around the world, there's really great momentum, and we're looking for those reasons to believe, right? As we're thinking about SDGs and how are we going to achieve them by 2030, I think the role of the business is, and I can see one question popped up, the role of the business is really to identify what are those scalable solutions and go and launch them around the world so that, we can all learn from each other, government, civil society, and business alike.
Yeah, I think it's right on. And I think all three of you mentioned goals and targets and SDGs. I'm going to go off script here. I think there's a really good question that MindSparks, sorry, that's your username, but kind of had in here. And kind of if you guys could touch on, Lee, maybe you start the way you brought SDGs up first. So I'm going to turn to you first. And what are some of the biggest challenges implementing the SDGs and the framework around your approach to helping to solve for the SDGs kind of in the organization?
Yeah, well, I think, most importantly, it's going to be around, staying the course. I do think the pandemic has given people a very different perspective, not only of their own lives and communities, but I think just the world view that probably we've never all had before. And so this kind of commonality of some of the experience, I think will help with the simple humanity of what needs to happen. Now, obviously, you've then got the economic challenges that will probably slow some things down unless we do things differently. So do I think the journey has got a little harder for everybody, including companies? Yes, undoubtedly. But do I think the resolve or the commitment is going to go the wrong way? No, I actually think that will also go up too. And I think it will more than meet the challenge and actually potentially even accelerate the progress. I say that just because, I see that galvanizing its impact it's had on our business, in that we're more determined than ever. And that we're ring fencing exactly those kinds of investments and progress and relationships versus other things that maybe seem to be more discretionary. So I would say that there's a level of confidence that, if you didn't think it was the right thing to do 3 months ago, then it kind of escaped you what really the fragility, I guess, that we have in the world today. And I think, like I say, some of that humanity will play through to both businesses, corporations, governments, and individuals. And I think it's up to responsible, great businesses to capitalize on that and to make sure that they follow through on the things they said they would do, even if it's now got a little bit tougher. So that would be my perspective on it. I feel very optimistic actually about what might come as a potential silver lining out of this very terrible situation.
Hugh, any thoughts on the SDGs? I know you have a ton of thoughts on SDGs.
But I'll keep my thoughts very short, Jeff. You're doing an excellent job at air traffic control here. It's I'm going to have a second career, I think, as a television producer. Look, the Globe has a strategy. It's called the SDGs, right? They have a plan. In my best understated Dutch, it can't be the worst thing for business to sort of align its strategy with the world's plan. And so, in DSM, we've done that. Our business strategy from the nature of the enterprises in our portfolio to where we focus our billions of R&D dollars to, even the type of employee we want to hire are largely guided by the SDGs. The biggest struggle for us, and I imagine it's for many other companies, is focus, because all of them have such a compelling nature to them. And if you look at them through the prism of trying to change the world in a meaningful way, you're going to find some aspect of your company that has application in one of the 17 SDGs. So we really try to focus on things like nutrition and malnutrition, that's our sweet spot, right? We bring a lot of competency to the table there. We try to focus on things like climate change and energy, because it's, again, another sweet spot where we've invested a lot of money in new innovation, new technology, and we have something meaningful to contribute. The challenges within the company is trying to keep the folks focused on that, making sure that our strategy is aligned with the SDG deliverables, trying not to get distracted by the great, wonderful, multiple stakeholder communities that want public-private partnership or whatever the buzzwords of the day is. We need to keep focused on achieving our goals. But it's been very helpful. The SDGs are very helpful in bringing clarity and to an organization, to analysts, to investors on what you're trying to accomplish and why. It's about as brief as I could ever be, Jeff.
Wow, I'm impressed. Ezgi, how about you?
I mean, I totally agree with both comments so far, and I would say at a minimum, it creates a common framework for all of us to be able to speak the same language, to learn from each other and to collaborate, right? And I think that's the power of collaboration here and the opportunity that exists, right? Because this is the world's plan, as Hugh said, and there are so many countries working against it, so many governments, public and private sector together, and I think there's huge opportunities. So I totally agree with the comment on focus. That's what we try to do at our company as well. One quick example, as you're thinking about circular economies, the beer industry is one of the greatest champions of circular economy with our two-way bottles, the returnable bottles and all that. So our public commitment is to ensure that all our products are in returnable bottles or, in packaging that's made from majority recycled content. That means that we have to go and collect that bottle somewhere. We put that responsibility on ourselves and our partners so that post-consumer waste makes its way back and finds another purpose, whether it's, in a returnable fashion, reusable or recyclable way. And I think that's where the opportunity is. And what this pandemic is really showing us is how around the world we're seeing that waste collection and recycling are not being deemed as essential. Right. So, and what you're finding out is that it's not just an environmental problem, it's a big social problem as well. And there are vulnerable communities around the world whose livelihoods are no longer being sustained. So there's huge opportunities there. And again, I'm going to bring it back to our accelerator program. Another startup that we identified out of Colombia called Nomo Waste. It's a startup that helps us increase dignity and transparency in those recycling supply chains and brings back those bottles, the lost bottles that we have, so that, again, we can continue to invest in the environment, but also our supply chains. And I think these are the opportunities that the companies should identify where they can create the greatest impact so that they can focus on those initiatives.
Yeah, and thank you guys. And thank you for all the questions that are coming in. Feel free to keep them coming in the chat box that we have there. To touch on a couple of points that have come up here too. And we talk about this SDGs. These are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are ultimately the kind of the global, as Hugh said, it's the global roadmap of how do we kind of improve society and the world moving forward. So kind of to spell out an acronym that we were using here, I do think it's important, and you guys all touched on it as well, as kind of the role of the private sector in kind of increasingly within the global development agenda is a real critical element of this. Many of you have asked questions about partnerships with nonprofits or with kind of the social sector or what have you, and I think it's really about understanding that we all have roles in the interaction and integration of our work, not just by ourselves, but with others is critical and paramount, ultimately to helping us really achieve the global development agenda. It's not one sector that's going to do it. Government's not going to do it. Nonprofits, NGOs are not going to do it. The private sector is not going to do it all on our own. It is about integrating kind of this work and collaborating. And I do think, increasingly to switch kind of the topic around this a little bit, guys, would love to get your perspective on kind of the purpose. We're talking a lot about the purpose of this work. Why is purpose more important today? I know, and maybe speak to it from an internal employee recruitment, retention perspective, but then externally as well. Kind of what's the role of purpose that you see through our global sustainability work? Anybody?
Yeah, maybe I'll kick it off. So at ABM Bev, our company dream is to bring people together for a better world. And I think as we always say, beer is the original social network. That purpose is so relevant, innately relevant to our core product and how it brings people together. And that coupled with how our operations are really deeply rooted in our communities, and we're part of that local heritage in so many parts of the world, I think really gives that purpose to our employees from the get-go, as the minute they step in to that brewery or the minute they take that first job. So we really take great pride in that. And I think what really sets us apart is that sense of ownership that comes with that sense of community when that business is as part of the local communities. So I would say over the last few months, it's been incredible to see the agility and the resilience of our employees around the world, trying to build back better, trying to look ahead with optimism, provide all the local support needed in terms of response plans, but now in terms of recovery as well. And I think that purpose really is incredibly important. When we set our sustainability commitments, in fact, we brought together a huge group of cross-functional teams to really start thinking about what are their shared beliefs so that we can set those scalable aspirations. So I think that purpose enables everyone to work better together so that they can set that shared vision. But yeah, incredibly relevant now more so than ever.
Yeah, and I think certainly in our business as well, I think just the purpose forms a kind of core, if you like, anchor to who we are, but also a North Star as to where we want to go. And I think if you're able to embed that purpose in everything you do, whether it's how you hire people and find people, whether it's how you develop people, how you run businesses and teams, how you help communities. I think if you're able to do all those things, you get this incredible multiplier effect. You get the what I describe as the kind of momentum that's almost unstoppable, because then you don't have a few people talking about purpose and trying to inspire others. You actually have everybody talking to everybody about how best to make a decision, and you make quicker decisions because you kind of know what the right thing is to do. So even though we've only quite recently kind of articulated our purpose globally, we talk about the world we want tomorrow starts with how we do business today. The most important part of that is the word today, because it's really about changing what we're doing right now, not just planning to do stuff in the future. But I think just that articulation, again, has been another accelerator, because now you've got, tens of thousands of people that can not only articulate our purpose, but also know if what they're doing actually feels right. We talk about this concept of growth that we're proud of. Are we proud of where we're growing and how we're growing? And we look at the decisions we make through that lens, and it enables us to stop doing things that maybe aren't the right thing to do and to do more of the things that are right. So, I've done a lot of recruiting over the years, and, right now, if I recruit for people to come into our business, they're most interested in things like volunteering programs, our Action in the Community program. They're interested in our ambassador program, where we go into NGOs and partner and help support NGOs develop. They are now, but they also were 5 years ago, and they were 10 years ago. So I'd say there's a common thread here is that, yes, it's probably increasingly important, but I think it's been very important for a long time. What's happening now is a better communication, a better articulation, and just greater transparency. So for good businesses and good enterprises, they will benefit, and they will get the best talent, and they'll get the best motivation and engagement. And ultimately, I think they'll get the best results as well.
Yeah, look, for a company like DSM, it's extraordinarily important, because literally we are the biggest company that nobody's ever heard of. And yet we have to find the ability to attract some of the most talented people in the industries we serve to come work for us. And, you probably don't know that the acronym DSM actually stands for Dutch State Mines. We started out as a coal mining company in the Netherlands 100 years ago. And probably as a consequence of that original sin, we're like so evangelical today about trying to solve some of the world's biggest problems. So we've repurposed that acronym. It now stands for Do Something Meaningful. And that's our purpose. We put an invitation out to the world, and it could be to potential employees, customers, vendors, stakeholders, partners. Come work with us to do something meaningful. Come to DSM and help us solve some of the world's biggest problems. Again, in the nutrition space, in the climate space, in the circular economy space. It is a very powerful tool to drive our culture and our employee retention, recruitment, employee value proposition, not just today, but going forward. Externally, I'm going to be a little more provocative. I think we live in a world today that has a government not just in the United States, but around the world, the government sector, media sector, and academic sector that has been highly polarized. And in that polarization, there's a leadership void. And we've seen that leadership void in the last few days here in the United States. There's been a leadership void, I think, with respect to climate for more than a decade. And I feel it's incumbent upon the private sector, the business community, to step up and help fill that leadership void. And there are generations of business leaders that were more taught on the Milton Friedman way of capitalism, that your role is to just increase the value of your shareholders' stake in the organization. I think that's changed today. And I think not just from a recruiting tool, but I think executives in companies want to do more than just make money. And so they're looking for opportunities to fill that leadership void externally and help drive the agenda, help drive the change across all of these big global SDG related issues that we're all confronting in our respective organizations.
Thanks, guys. You know, to build on this this idea of purpose, and you know, it wasn't that long ago that we had kind of this concept of or leading with purpose was mutually exclusive to the bottom line of our businesses. You know, how do you see that change? How have you seen that change? Where do you see that going? What is it going to take to ensure that, kind of like the work that DSM has done, for example, Hugh, and really integrated sustainability at the core of its business operations, that it's not a one or the other in the future? So would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the companies on the panel here. If you look at, you know, when Mars and InBev, and there's so many examples. I think when the world looks at those companies, those private sector companies that have done well during this horrific pandemic, they're going to find that those companies that really practiced ESG values were so much more agile and adaptable in dealing with all of the changes that we were forced to confront day to day. It actually becomes a competitive advantage for the business. It's not just the talking point or public relations. You've now created a new structure, new culture, new way of work, collaborative way of working in a company that makes it that much more agile, adaptable to a world that is changing at breakneck speed. I mean, I'm a firm believer that all of the trends that were in place prior to the pandemic only get accelerated by sort of a disruptive situation. And the companies that were preparing for that already are coming out the other end much stronger, much more resilient, much more powerful.
Yeah, and if I can give the example of ABM Bev, you know, I've been with the company 7 years now, and we've been on an incredible sustainability journey. You know, sustainability is our business. We've always said that. Beer is made of natural ingredients. You know, we're incredibly tied to the communities, as I mentioned before. But when you think about sustainability, you know, when I first joined the company, we were housed under corporate affairs. And there was only so much we could do. And, you know, with the best intentions, with the best initiatives and programs at hand, we were not as integrated into the business. And about 3 years ago, we actually moved the sustainability function under the procurement organization. And the execution power that we've gotten with that, and the sense of ownership, the agility, you know, the close linkages to our supply chains has been incredible. If you think about it, you know, our 100% renewable electricity commitment, we're looking to convert nearly 7 terawatt hours of electricity. If we hit that commitment by 2025, we will be the largest corporate purchaser of renewables by bringing additionality into the, you know, nearly 50 markets that we operate in. We could not do that alone sitting in a siloed function. But when you're part of the procurement organization, you can really easily influence your supply chains. You can have more meaningful conversations with your suppliers. You can think about the future of packaging and co-innovate, right? So I think that change has really enabled us to bring some of that core purpose of sustainability back into the business as we think about the role of the company and you know, what it means in the society and the world that we operate in.
Lee, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think it's been very well put. I mean, I think you know, one thing that our CEO often talks about is this concept of, you know, purpose without performance isn't really possible, but performance without purpose is kind of meaningless. Like, what are you trying to do if you don't really have a purpose and a direction? And I think, you know, this myth that these two things could be even mutually exclusive is exactly that. And the success stories of many, many, many different types of industry show that that's just absolutely not the case. And I think, our job, to answer one of the questions I've seen in the stream earlier today in the session, is to raise the bar, is to do what we do and do even more of it and inspire others to join the movement. It's not to put a spotlight on those that don't, it's to put a spotlight on those that do.
Sorry, I missed mute. Yeah, thank you guys. I mean, there's two other questions in here that I'm going to ask. I know we're running short on time, but firstly, there's an interesting question in here around kind of what are we seeing happening in our environmental footprint, or with carbon specifically. We're, in light of kind of less business travel and changed operations, kind of, I've seen a recent article where we've seen a 17% reduction in carbon globally. I know from a business perspective, we've seen a significant reduction in our carbon footprint over the last couple of months. Are you guys seeing similar effects, and kind of do you anticipate that continuing based on this, or kind of any perspective you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, Jeff, I'm here in New Jersey with you. I can see the sky now. I mean, it's, that hasn't always been the case, blue sky, it's beautiful. And look, we've learned in our company that we don't necessarily need to jump on planes and fly all around the world all the time. And that's significantly reduced. The lack of travel has significantly reduced our carbon footprint. And again, when we're confronted with a disruptive crisis like we are today, all of those trends that were in progress are accelerating. So we're seeing much more digitization, much more use of, things like Zoom and Teams and Google Hangouts. And so I think that those things that were on the way, that work from home sort of on the ways trend, is now here to stay and will only become more profound. So I think there'll be a natural reduction in carbon footprint as a consequence of those things. But we haven't cut back at all in all of the major large capital projects we had underway to reduce our carbon footprint already. So here in New Jersey at our Belvedere plant, this week, when the sun comes out, we'll be able to run that plant on 100% renewable electricity from our 62-acre solar field at the plant. We have similar plants in Kingstree, South Carolina. We have rec deals on wind farms in Oklahoma and Texas, and those things don't stop. We're continuing to do it, not just because it reduces our carbon footprint, but it's great to run a sustainable business at a lower cost that way. And so, I remain encouraged. You'll probably hear a lot of rhetoric from those that have been trying to derail this movement for some time, that, oh, look, it was all a fad. It's not. And that gives me a lot of confidence for a brighter future.
Ezgi, Lee, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say on climate change, what we're seeing, like the EU Green Recovery Package that was unveiled last week, right? I mean, it's still up for approval by the member states, but I think we're going to see an acceleration of some of those, right? As the world looks to build back, they're going to try to build back better. They're going to try to, I think, accelerate some of the changes that were already emerging in certain countries, so that they can create that systemic change. That's on the environment front. The other piece is, we are seeing growing inequality within and between countries as well, right? I think social contract is higher up on the agenda. So that's going to be another big change that we're going to see, that we're going to have to, again, be able to connect our sustainability efforts, work more closely with the governments and the communities, because never before have we really seen the impact of biodiversity and public health and environment so closely linked together, right? So I think all these changes, yes, we're seeing the acceleration of trends, but it also means that we're going to have to stand up for more things, right? It's not just the simple stuff. It's also the hard conversations that we're going to have with our supply chain, with our, with our entire value chain and community. So I think there's huge opportunities for us to identify new partnerships and new ways of working so that we can build back better.
Guys, we're getting, excuse me, we're getting to the point of kind of closing remarks here. So let me just mention something. In the chats, I want to thank everybody for all the comments that we saw in here. And, when we approach and think about sustainability, it does include all aspects of our operations. There were some comments in here just for everybody that there were some concerns even on this panel that there were 3 white men making up the 4-person panel. And, D&I is very important to our company, and I know to each of these companies as well. kind of our teams are, you know, at GAF are very diverse that represent our communities, certainly where we live and work. And in the leadership, you know, I can certainly speak to having sitting on a number of different sustainability-based or corporate responsibility-based boards, where there's great, awesome diversity in this sector, and leadership and great leadership across both minorities, women, and men. So I didn't want this panel to go without that being recognized in the comments that came. So guys, in the last minute, I'd ask each of you to share, please, if a company's just starting off in their sustainability journey, or an individual that's with us is just starting off in their sustainability journey, any recommendations you have for them or resources that you would suggest that they reach out to, other than, you know, contacting us, but would love each of your thoughts on that as we close.
I mean, I think more than ever, you know, business is personal. You know, business is society, and the boundaries are blurring really fast. So I would say anyone who's either starting out or is joining a company is, how can you have societal impact? How can you make a difference? And you know, putting that at the forefront of the way that you approach running or being part of a business, big or small. I think you can make a big difference, and business is society.
I would just say, lean in on your passion, find ways to propel that purpose that you have, and continue to build your network. Look me up. We're always looking for new partners, and trying to be part of the solution. We don't have all the answers yet, but you know, we're here in it together with you.
I would say always work on your communication skills, in person, social media, etc. Make sure that your purpose is aligned with the company that you work for's purpose and strategy. There's many networks out there that are fantastic in this space. U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation that Jeff and I get involved with is a great place to meet people, lots of people that share a similar professional background and similar goals. And you know, always come to the Social Innovation Summit. It's for years has been one of my highlights when it's in New York City every year, or on the West Coast. Zeev, Mel, Natasha, the whole team does a great job. I'm amazed at how they were able to pull this all together virtually. And even an old guy like me can learn something new. That's what I'll take away from this whole experience today.
Well, Lee, Hugh, Ezgi, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today. All of you in the audience, thanks a million for being at the Social Innovation Summit this year. We hope the rest of the summit goes well, and you get a lot of great takeaways with it. So with that, we're going to sign off, and thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.